Okay. Well, good morning. We are glad that you have all kind of joined us today for this session. We are lucky enough to have the Department of Services come over today to talk to you guys, give you some information, and hopefully help you as you start this new transition into this new position. So with that, I want you to know we are recording the session. It will go up on the website as soon as it is completed by the end of the week so that you can review it, watch it again if you need to. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to John Mahlers to get us started and do anything at the end. All right, John, I am giving you control.
All right, do you see our PowerPoint? Is it the presentation or is it the...
I do. It's not in the presentation.
Okay, let me fix that. Hold on, I'm having trouble here. Huh. It's not letting me go back and unshare and reshare.
Okay, hold on a minute. I can take it from you. Let me do that.
All right,
there
we go.
And then...
I picked the wrong one. Looked like it was the right one.
Do you want to change? I'm going to change. Okay, now I'm changing back to you. Now you should be able to share again.
All right, let me try take two. It wasn't that screen. I tried that one before. That didn't work.
Let's see what you got.
Is that working? All right.
Yep.
Oh, I need to, yeah. One last thing, and we're ready to go.
Yeah.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Sorry, John's way better technology than I am. For sure. That's what happens when you have an attorney and an accountant trying to do technology, I think. Hi, good morning. My name is Adam Norman. I'm the Deputy Director, as it says, 4D Director of the Child Support Bureau for the state of Indiana. And with me today is Peggy Boggs. She's, you'll hear from her after myself, and she is one of our Assistant Deputy Directors in charge of some of the financial operations of the Child Support Bureau. And then John Mahlers, who I think you just saw getting this set up. He is another Assistant Deputy Director, and he is in charge of our Financial Quality Assurance Unit, which makes sure that everyone is spending the money the right way and how they can spend the money, all those federal dollars. And then Joe Jean is going to be our final presenter today, and he is the Director of Organizational Change Management for the Child Support Bureau, and that is his main job is with Invest, which is the new statewide computer system, which is going to be replacing our current ISET system, and he's going to give you a lot of information about that in just a moment. So I'm just going to kind of quickly go through some of the topics that we're going to be covered, and are you guys seeing it change? I just want to make sure that you're seeing it change when I change it. Okay. So I'm going to go over some background about what the Title 4D is, what the program's about, and then we're going to get into some the specifics with functional aspects of the program. So Peggy is going to go into about payments and non-4D cases and court order entry, things like that. And then John's going to get into some more of the administrative parts of the program, cooperative agreements, the expenses and expenditures, and then some more about confidentiality and safeguarding the data that's in there. And then the support fees are going to be talked about, the annual support fees. That's always an interesting topic. And then we're going to be talking about Invest. And then that's what Joe's going to be talking about. And it just has one small thing there, but it's a huge thing that we're going to be dealing with this year in 2021 and next year as well. So it's very important, and it's going to really do some great things for our program. So I'll give you a little bit of background about what this is, and you're going to hear the term 4D and child support and say, what the heck is that? And so the term 4D is the Roman numeral for 4, and then D is that Title 4D of the Social Security Act that established several programs at the federal level, and one of them was the child support program in the 1970s. And as you can see, it is federally regulated. Every state must have a single state agency responsible for a 4D or child support program, and that is what Indiana's Child Support Bureau is part of. We are located in part of Indiana's Department of Child Services, and a lot of people know that as child welfare at one time, but that is who we are, our umbrella agency, which is a good fit because it's all about security of children and support of children, and ours is the financial support of children. So this is really a program that's been around federally since the 70s. We're, I think, in our 42nd or 43rd year now here at the Child Support Bureau in Indiana. So every state can set up how they give these services differently. They have some options and some choices, and Indiana chose to set it up where services are provided at the local level through these CSB or Child Support Bureau contracts, or known as cooperative agreements, with every county prosecutor, every county clerk, and some, I think there's 42 or 43 Title 4D courts that specifically are for 4D or child support cases. Just to be clear, that doesn't mean that other courts in counties cannot hear child support cases. That's just a specific contract where they get reimbursement. John's going to go into that in more detail later. So in Indiana, we have a local services that are provided and implement at the local level that's administered at the state level, and that's what the Child Support Bureau is part of. So, as I said, when this started in the 1970s, this was really a cost recovery program, right? It was about the federal government was giving out money to people, and the common term is welfare. It's now called TANF, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families. It used to be called AFDC. And they said, hey, we need to kind of recover this money. If we're giving it to a mother and a child, or a father and a child, these government benefits, we need to have some way to get those paid back to us from the other parent. And that's really kind of what birthed the modern child support program in the United States. And as time went on, it became more and more complex, as life does, and more detailed, and the more focused on what it's really going to do and what benefits it can provide. So it used to be a cost recovery, and it really moved into a completely family-focused program, meaning like, how can we serve the entire family? Those who are owed the child support, the children on the program, those who actually owe the child support. What are barriers that don't allow them to pay their child support? What are some issues that we can assist them with as a program to provide support for that child? Because our mission is to provide financial security for children. And the child support program in not only the nation, but the state of Indiana, is the third largest poverty kind of prevention program in the country and in Indiana. We play an important role in bringing people up out of poverty, maintaining them out of poverty, and providing financial security and stability for the families and children. And so that's kind of recognizing that it's become more family focused over the last decade or decade and a half. So some of the populations that we serve, and I'll just kind of say this, I'll get more details, really it's anyone, right? Anyone that wants our services can have our services. That's really the overall concept. But it's really custodial or non-custodial parents who enroll in 4D services, which is free for them to enroll in. There's no cost to them to enroll in those services. Current and former enrollees for public assistance, that's that TANF I mentioned before. Those that are part of the foster care cases, federally funded, that's 4E. So that 4E is kind of another federally determined thing by the Social Security Act, the foster care cases. Medicaid enrollees who want to get services, so it's not automatic, but if they're on Medicaid, they can also have those services. And then interstate cases of any of those categories I just mentioned. So that is cases from if someone has moved to Illinois or mother lives in Colorado and the father lives here, and she wants to get support for her child that lives in Colorado with her. That's an interstate case. We also do international cases, and not just with Canada. We do them with all over the world. So it's a pretty broad population that we serve. These are the required 4D services that are required when someone enrolls in our program, and these are services that are provided locally but supported centrally here at the Child Support Bureau. Locating people that to establish paternity or support, establishment of paternity is another services, support order establishment, enforcement of that support order, and then the processing of all the payments of child support. So those are our main required 4D services. And so there's another category in the state of Indiana called non-4D services, and that service is basically payment processing. And so on every county's caseload, they have a set of 4D cases. That means that those people have enrolled and asked for child support services, or they automatically became a 4D case. Let's say they're on TANF. And then a whole other group of cases for non-4D that there's a child support order. It's part of the ISET system, the statewide computer system, but they are not receiving 4D child support services like through the prosecutor's office and through the Child Support Bureau. Those a lot of times are private cases and private party cases, and those cases can become a 4D case. If those people that are non-4D want to get 4D child support services, they can enroll and switch from being a non-4D to a 4D case. And it can go the other way as well if they no longer want those services. ISETs is the statewide computer system that handles all aspects of 4D and non-4D services. So all those services that are listed on the screen before and on this screen for 4D and non-4D are part of ISETs. It's a system of record. It's federally mandated and federally certified system that is the one that not only processes all the payments, keeps track of all the payments, records all the payments, but is basically the case management system, has management of all aspects of the case, names, date of birth, addresses, the history of the case, actions that were taken on the case, those type of things. That's what ISETs. And this is the system that came about, I would say, probably in the 90s, I think. I was a deputy prosecutor in Tippecanoe County. We were a pilot county in 94. So I think it finally was certified in 1999. I think Marion County in Indianapolis was one of the last counties that came on. So it's been around for at least 2 decades or more. Invest is the system that is going to be replacing. That's what Joe is going to talk about later in the presentation. So here's the impact, just to give you an idea of what the child support program does, and this is in Indiana. So ISETs processes nearly $1 billion annually on all child support cases on system 4D and non-4D. And that's money that goes mostly to families. Nearly all of it goes to families at this point. Our caseload for 4D cases, these ones that want child support services, is about $245,000. That's for in federal fiscal year. That's what FFY is 2020. We are, just a little side note, we began in November of last year for the first time in the history of the program, a centralized online enrollment application on our public website, which is in.gov child support, and that was new. And that has been overwhelming at times. A lot of people have signed up and enrolled through that online, in addition to enrolling at the local prosecutor's offices for 4D services. So normally we have about, before COVID, we had about 1,000 to 1,100 a month. That went down significantly after COVID for a variety of reasons. And after we put on the online enrollment link, we had about 1,200 a month just through that, in addition to what was coming in through the local prosecutor's offices. So we expect to see that number rise. About 3% of the 40 cases are active TANF. So when I go back to that first bullet point, talks about $1 billion annually on 40 and non-40, and I said most everything goes to families. All but 3% of those active currently on TANF cases, if they're currently on TANF, that money goes back to the TANF program. That's a pretty low number. That number, that's kind of the average. It has risen slightly in 2020 due to COVID. and the effects of COVID, but that number's kind of trending back down now. So that's kind of average. Just as a side note, when I started in child support in the 90s, it was about 30% of our caseload was TANF, active open TANF cases. That's significantly less. And there's the last point I said, most of it goes to families. Clerks, all of you, are key partners in the success of our child support program in Indiana. This program would not be able to run and be successful without you and your work. And some of that is some of the important parts, and these are just some of them. And this is obviously not everything. Peg is going to go into more detail about a lot of the functional aspects of the role, is building these non-40 cases and updating ISETs with court orders and addresses so payments can be processed correctly. And these undistributed, which means that they don't know where the money is supposed to go because they may not have the proper address, so we can keep that low. And processing cash payments. So that's the only payments that can really be paid locally is cash payments. Note that in some counties there is work that's done with the clerks that in conjunction with the prosecutors, and others they kind of work a little more independently. So that's just depending on the relationship of the county office. They also direct payers to go to the federally mandated SDU, or state disbursement unit, that is mandated by the federal government. Every state has one of those set up, and we do. Ours is called INSCU, INSCCU is the an acronym. And as we know, acronyms are used in everything that we a lot of them in child support. And they're just, and I know that I think you said this was going to be recorded, the PowerPoint's going to be available as well. And there's other information you can get as well, is about how to pay by credit and debit card. And then there's also, like I mentioned, working with the prosecuting attorneys, 40 offices as well, in partnership to promote the program and the functionality of the program. So this is just, I'm not going to go over this in detail, but this is just giving you an idea of the shared task kind of aspect of child support enforcement in the state of Indiana, and all the different groups that work together to make it successful. You have DCS Child Support Bureau in the center there. And if you look at all the different groups around that kind of work with us, we have, memorandums of understanding with several groups, whether it's the Gaming Commission for Lottery Intercepts and Casino Intercepts. We have the Department of Corrections. We work with the Department of Revenue. We work with the DMV because we have suspension of driver's licenses that's available as an enforcement tool, as is the putting a lien on titles for vehicles. And the Department of Workforce Development, we intercept unemployment benefits if someone knows child support. We work with the DNR as well for license suspension at time. Of course, State Board of Accounts we have a good working relationship with them, but also the governor's office. We are part of the executive branch, so they direct a lot of the action and what we do. We clearly work with the Supreme Court, courts, system itself. IPAC is the Indiana Prosecuting Attorneys Council. We work with them very closely for policy and guidance with the prosecutors' offices and all of you. So just real briefly, and John will get into more detail about this, there's basically two main funding streams for each, for the entire program. This is at both the state and the county level. There is something called the Federal Financial Participation, FFP, which is 66%, which means that 66% of all appropriate 4D related expenses will be reimbursed at 66%. So if you have a 4D expense as $1, 66 cents of that's going to be reimbursed to for counties to the county budget at 66 cents. It does not have a ceiling. It's one of the only federal programs that is that way. They believe that is that important of a program, and it is one of the most robust reimbursements of any federal program in the country. The other funding stream is performance-based incentives. We have entire lectures and programs on just explaining incentives. It is fairly complicated at times, but suffice it to say that the federal government there's performance that they expect from all the child support programs around the country, and there's basically 5 different performance measures, things like paternity establishment, support establishment, collection of child support, those type of things. And based on that, they say we have this pot of money at the federal level that we're going to divide up between states depending on their performance. So states are kind of competing for the bigger percentage for each state. And within Indiana, once we get our share, the counties then get kind of their own respective share based on their own individual county performance. That is then further subdivided between the prosecutor's office. There's a specific fund by statute. Clerks have one as well, as does the county in general. All this incentive money can only be used for 40-related expenses. So those are kind of the two major funding streams to do the child support work, the 40 child support work in Indiana. And so there's a monthly expense claim for this FFP that would be done by each county office that has a cooperative agreement. So that's every clerk and every prosecutor, and like I mentioned before, some of the 40 courts. DCS, which is our umbrella agency, we basically draw down from the federal grant and we reimburse the county for that money. So I kind of went over this a little bit before, but one of the key points, there's kind of a second bullet point for incentive funds, is that it must supplement, not supplant. What that means, and that is that you can't say, oh wait, hey, I got $25,000. I'm just going to subtract $25,000 from my budget and just use this money. That's not what the federal rules are. So it would be in addition to what is budgeted for the 4D program and the county budget for a specific county or office. Each county auditor tracks these incentive expenditures and the separate funds. And we work closely with every county auditor as well. We have a good working relationship with all of them. And then, for example, in federal fiscal year 2018, our incentives in Indiana were $12 million for the whole state. That got divided by all the political subdivisions that I mentioned before. We've been around $12 million the last several federal fiscal years. My expectation is that we will continue on that track for a little while. Hopefully we go up, right? But generally Indiana performs pretty well. We are, when our ranking, I don't put tons of weight into this, but just as a general point of interest, our ranking compared to other states, we are 7th in the country in our rank of overall performance. We hover between 6, 7, 8 usually. About, I'd say, 10, 12 years ago, we were in the 30s. So we've done dramatically better with everyone working together. So that is reflected in the amount of incentives that we receive. And these are the measures I talked about. So it's maternity establishment, establishment support orders, current support, case collection of child support, cases paying on arrears, how much back support are we, how many cases are we collecting that on, and cost effectiveness. We tend to be a very cost effective program in Indiana. For every dollar that we spend, we collect $5.50 in child support. That's near the top in the country. We've hovered that for a very long time, and that's kind of some of our conservative roots, right? We want to be cost effective and conservative in how we spend our money, but spend it wisely and effectively. And that goes back to how we're spending the incentives and the reimbursements for FFP. Here is the state statute, and this is how I was talking about how the money is split even further. So it goes from the federal government to the state of Indiana at $12 million, and then it's split by each county. All 92 counties get a certain amount based on that performance of those 5 performance measures on the previous screen. And then within each county, it's even further subdivided by statute. And you can see the percentages, 33.4% to the prosecutor, and those are the fund numbers, 22.2% to the clerk, the Title 40 incentive fund, which is that county kind of fund, and the CSD, we get that as well, because we process the lion's share of all of the money, and that is what funds our SBU, that's the disbursement unit. That's what does that. Here's our ranking, like I was talking about. We do fairly well. Performance and this type of data is important just to kind of get, in my opinion, a general idea of where you go and where we've been and where we're headed. I am a proponent. I work for 2 county prosecutors and dealt with the media at times, so I know data is only good as sometimes how you report it sometimes and what you want to say. But it is important to know where we're at and where we rank overall. And I think that is something to celebrate, the collective work of everyone. All right, and I think that is my part. I think we're going to turn over to Peggy Boggs now, and she's going to talk about the functional duty. So I appreciate everyone being here today, and I look forward to meeting you, especially when COVID it kind of gets over and we can actually start going out and to be in offices more. So thank you very much.
Good morning. All right, so today, as you've all been in your position since at least the beginning of January, you may have already performed or seen some of these functional duties in person that I'm covering today. The next few slides list the main functional duties handled by the clerk's office and where you can find these instructions. So the first two functions on our slide today are posting payments and balancing and approving batches. If you click on the underlined document name on the PDF copy of the PowerPoint presentation that you were given, it will take you directly to that document in our Child Support Resource CSR website. You have to be sure you're looking at the PDF document and not the PowerPoint presentation, though, in order to get to that link. Okay. The document provides specific instructions with screen prints that show you how to follow those specific functions in ISIS. On this slide, we have instructions for printing child support checks. If you need to complete an adjustment for money that is posted at the clerk's office, then you would need to contact the ISIS help desk, and they can talk you through that process. And their phone number is listed later on in our presentation. If you need to request a adjustment for money that was posted at the state, then you will need to use the add adjustment request form and fill that out and email that request. It emails that request to our State Child Support Bureau, CSB. Okay, and Adam talked about building non-4D cases a while ago. So this is where you would go to a case initiation for clerks if you're wanting to know how to create a non-4D case. And then we're talking about changing addresses. The mail address is used unless there is previously or has been previously a check address on the participant for all the payments posted at the clerk's office. But if the payments are posted at the state, then it always uses the mail address only. And then there's instructions for how to update the addresses in ISIS. Okay, this slide covers the instructions on how to add court orders in ISIS and then also how to complete bank reconciliation. So please note that you need to be sure that you're keeping that up to date and you cannot be more than 3 months behind. So if you need help with your bank reconciliation, that's one thing that the ISIS help desk can help you with also. And this is our lovely screen with ISIS. As Adam said, it's been out there since the 1990s. And so it's screen, and it's a little hard to navigate. You've got to go from screen to screen. It doesn't keep your case number when you move from screen to screen. And we are currently working on the new system, and it will be more user-friendly. And so you'll be able to point and click, and you'll have easier navigation. So Joe Jean will talk more about some of those changes that we'll see when we move to Invest and just later on in the presentation. So now I'm going to turn back over to John Mallers, and then I'll be back later for some other slides. Thank you.
All right, a lot of back and forth today, but that's all right. I am going to talk a little bit today about some administrative duties, essentially forms that you file related to Title 4D. And the first and most important, I suppose, is the Cooperative Agreement. The Cooperative Agreement is essentially a contract between CSB and the clerk's offices. It sets out the duties and responsibilities of the clerk and the duties and responsibilities of CSB related to the child support function. It also, if you have a cooperative agreement, as Adam mentioned before, you can claim monthly reimbursements for Title 4D, and you can also spend incentive funds. So having a cooperative agreement allows you to do that as well. In addition, there's an annual budget addendum. The annual budget addendum is a financial addendum to the cooperative agreement. They're both required under federal regulations, and it is just it's filled out at the end of each calendar year for the next year, and it's simply an estimate of what you think you're going to claim in Title 4D reimbursements for the next year. So it's not something that we hold you to if you exceed that or anything, but it gives us an idea of what amounts we're going to need to draw down from the federal government as the year goes on. So the cooperative agreement's every 2 years, and it's actually this year was just a 1-year amendment for 2021. Presumably next year, for 2022, it'll be a 2-year agreement. That's what it's generally been going forward. And the ABA, or the annual budget addendum, is a 1-year agreement. And the cooperative agreement has been a paper document forever. It's been something where we've mailed it and they've signed it and sent it back and all that sort of thing. Starting next year, it's going to be an electronic form on our 4D Expenditure Portal. The ABA has been an electronic form for a while, so there's electronic signature. There's no back and forth. It saves a lot of time and energy doing that. In addition is the monthly expense claim form, and that is what Adam talked a little bit about, the 66% reimbursements, the county expenses that you incur. Counties are entitled to a reimbursement for expenses that they incur enforcing child support orders. So the time, the expenses, the supplies, and the equipment that they use doing that, they can claim a portion of that for reimbursement. And it's on this form that you do. Again, it's also on the 4D Expenditure Portal. So a county, either themselves or a lot of the clerks, most of the clerks actually have a vendor that does this work for them, but you will have timesheets for the individual employees, and they will determine what percentage of their time is worked in 4D. You'll have allocation methods for supplies and other expenses, and you will figure out what portion of your expenses are eligible for reimbursement. You'll enter that information into our portal. That information comes to us, and we look at it, we review it, and then it goes through the payment process, and eventually it's reimbursed back to the county. And that's all done through the monthly expense claim form. Now, we do have a smart guide. You'll see there's a link to it again on the PDF version. It's a step-by-step guide to show you how to navigate the portal for the MEC. Okay. Incentive expenditures. Adam talked about those, the Title 4D incentive expenditures. And again, these are expenditures that are intended to supplement, not supplant what the county is currently doing with their levy money. It's intended to only be spent on the 4D portion of an expense. You can't just spend it on everything, and some of it's 4D. It's actually just the 4D portion of an expense. There is no filing requirement for the incentive funds. There used to be a quarterly incentive expenditure report, or the QIE, but we started, and that's where the county offices would report the incentive expenditures that they incurred each quarter. But we started getting the ledgers from the auditors each quarter, so we had the expenditure information, so there was really no point in having you fill out a form for information that we already had. So we were able to get rid of that. And that was about a year ago, almost exactly. So there is no reporting requirement for the incentive expenditures, but the documentation requirement is still there. And this is very important. And just like with the MECs, you need to have timesheets or to justify how much percentage of time or how much percentage of the wages you're claiming for employees. And you have to have allocation methods to tell how much you're claiming for supplies. Same with the incentive funds. You need to have documentation to justify how much of the cost of something you're using incentive funds for. And you need to keep that documentation with the invoices for the incentive expenditures and keep that with your monthly Title 4D documentation. So there's no reporting requirement anymore, but there still is the documentation requirement. The clerk, like Adam mentioned earlier, there's 3 incentive funds. There's a prosecutor incentive fund, a clerk incentive fund, and then this Title 4D incentive fund. The clerk can spend from theirs. The prosecutor spends from theirs. They kind of have dominion over those. But the Title 4D incentive fund is a county-wide one that every 4D office that has a cooperative agreement with us can spend from that fund. So it's almost an additional fund for a clerk or a prosecutor or a Title 4D court. And since it's a fund that multiple people can spend from, ideally you want to have some sort of agreement between those parties as to how these funds are going to be used. We actually just released a guidance earlier this week, partly on this very issue. Multiple people can spend from there. I've seen numerous occasions where one office was intending to use it, another office swooped in and used some of those funds, and it created a real problem in the county, a real misunderstanding and hurt feelings. And so ideally what you get is the prosecutor, the clerk, the auditor, maybe a judge if there's a 4D court, get them in a room and determine how you want to spend this money. It doesn't have to be a formal written agreement, although that'd be nice, but just make sure that everybody is on board and on the same page about how 8895 is going to be used so that you avoid misunderstandings in the future. The last thing about incentive funds I want to talk about were the incentive fund transfer agreements. Incentive funds can be transferred between incentive funds. You can't transfer incentive funds anywhere else, but you can transfer clerk incentive funds to the prosecutor one, the prosecutor one to the clerk one. And the reason that we do that is a couple of reasons. One is just for accounting ease. It's a lot easier for us to track if the prosecutor is just spending from theirs and the clerk's just spending from theirs, and everybody doesn't have their finger in everybody else's fund, so to speak. And so that's one reason. Another reason is to try to facilitate the spending of these incentive funds. There's $40 million, give or take, sitting in county funds across the state, unspent incentive funds. That's not enhancing the program. That's not getting money to the kids. And so we're trying to, one of the things we try to do to enhance the spending is to say, all right, let's say the prosecutor hypothetically has some employment program that they want to do for the non-custodial parents. But they don't have enough money in their incentive fund to start it. The clerk's sitting there on some balance of some funds. What we've tried to promote is the clerk should, in this scenario anyway, and it could go either way, in this scenario, the clerk would be open to the possibility of transferring some of their unused funds to the prosecutor so they could help this program get going. Because really they're county funds. If they're trying to complete a county goal for child support, even though it might not help your office in particular, if it's furthering it at the county level, that's something that we hope that people would be open to the possibility of doing that. Okay, I talked a little bit about the 4D Expenditure Portal. It is our portal where all of the information related to Title 4D is input, at least related to Title 4D expenditures. The MEC, the monthly expense claim, like I said, is input in there, the ABA as well, the annual budget addendum. And like I also mentioned, the Cooperative Agreement will be in there next year. By the end of next year, the Cooperative Agreement will be in there as well. You need to have access to the portal. So if you do not have access to the 4D Expenditure Portal, you can click on that link, and that will get you right to a user access form. It tells you where to email it, and you can fill that out and email that and get access to the portal. Because we need to have a preparer and a certifier in the office, and we'd like to have the elected official be one of the certifiers. And the certifier is the person that reviews the work and then hits the button in the portal that submits it to us for our review. So, and if you don't have access to the CSR or you can't get that link doesn't work, you can email us at CSBAC request. I should have put that on there. CSBAC request at dcs.in.gov. Okay, just real briefly, I want to talk real briefly about my group. We were created about 9 or 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, from an audit finding from Board of Accounts saying that CSB wasn't monitoring expenses well enough. We weren't monitoring 4D expenses. So our group was created as a result, as part of our corrective action plan, and our jobs has evolved over time. But one of the main duties we have are these financial quality assurance reviews. We review 1/3 of the counties every year. We go through, we look at the expenditures that you claim for reimbursement. We recalculate those numbers based on the information that you have and make sure that you're calculating things right. You're including everything that you should and not including things that you shouldn't. We'll also look at your supporting documentation. Make sure that you have timesheets to justify the wages you're claiming. Do you have other allocation methods to justify that? Do you have proper internal controls? Do you have a separate preparer and a separate certifier in the portal? You have to have proper internal controls as well. And we also review incentive fund expenditures as well to make sure those are properly adjusted and accounted for. And lastly, just real quick, this is a copy of our page, or a screenshot of our page on the CSR. It's called the 4D Claims Incentives page, and just has different categories with all sorts of information. We have guidance documents that help you with different types of expenses you're going to run into. Conference expenses, how to handle those, bonuses, construction expenses. You see the 4D Expenditure Portal guidance about halfway down. That's where the MEC guidance is, and there's an ABA guidance in there that helps you go through the portal. And then lastly, we have other forms, like if you look at the absolute bottom, it says Incentive Fund Transfer Agreement. This is where you'd be able to go find that Incentive Fund Transfer Agreement as well. All right, I think my part is done, and who's next? Peggy is next.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the ISID system. There has to be administration of that system, and the person that does that, there's a separate county security administrator, CSA, that is in each office. So the clerk and the prosecutor has their own. And that person sets up a person's access to all the programs and systems that they need for ISIDs. And so the roles and duties of the CSA are provided in that CSA FTI and security guide. And the user security guide is an explanation of more that provides more information to users on the security of the system. Biennial security inspections, those are conducted by the CSB security team. And what they do is they go to each county office, because this is required by the IRS and Office of Child Support Enforcement. And so what they do is they ensure that your office has adequate physical and procedural safeguards in place so that you're safeguarding confidential information in the system. Okay. And IRS safeguarding. So the main part of that is federal tax information, FTI training. And we have to have that every year. It's mandatory for every user that has access to ISID. And if we don't have that, if we don't provide proof that we've had that training, we could lose the ability to intercept federal tax money from participants, which we get a lot of money from that. So that's something we want to do. Okay. There's a federal audit that happens every 3 years just to make sure that we are following those procedures and everybody is getting trained. And if you need more information on that, then click on IRS Safeguard Procedures. And we also have a federal data reliability audit every 3 years, well, every year, and then the feds require a full DRA every 3 years. And when there's a full DRA, then the clerk will have to provide copies of the court files for those cases that get pulled for that audit. Confidentiality, so that's very important. It's a complex subject in this modern age of electronic information. There's a lot of information out there, and so we need to be sure we're protecting that. So the general rules for the clerks are on this slide, but we really encourage you to learn more by reading the guidance provided by the State Court Administration for the clerks. And then also there's a CSB webmail from July 27th of 2015 that is out there on the CSR that you could review. Now, if you want to learn more about confidentiality, or find that information, your field consultants could help you with that. And in parenting time resources, was really excited when we were able to offer this to our participants. So we have a helpline. It's a toll-free line that is staffed by licensed attorneys, and they answer calls about parenting, Indiana's parenting time guidelines. So just for Indiana. And they provide information about establishing and securing parenting opportunities, and they make referrals as needed. So that is available from Monday through Friday from 11 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we have a coloring calendar, and you may have saw that before or heard about it, but we used to print them, but this year we're not able to print them. So we do have a link provided on this slide that you can click on, and it would bring up the calendar so you can download it and it can be printed. Then we also have a parenting time guidelines that could be found at the link that's on that slide also. And all those resources are available to the public at no charge. Annual support fees, ASFE is what we call it. The State Child Support Bureau, we send out ASC notices to the non-custodial parent in early February. And then if the ASV is not paid by July, then we will go ahead and send an IWO out to the employer to try to collect that fee. So both of those notices inform the NCP to send their payment to the NSCU, or they need to send it via income withholding to NSCU or Child Support Bureau. And resources. Your CSB Regional Field Consultant is your greatest resource, so please use them. If you have any questions or need training, give them a call. So there's a field consultant map and contact list that is on there. If you forget, you had your contact and you forget, you can pull it up on the CSR and look to say, okay, yeah, this is who I need to call, and this is their email address and all that information. So please use them for any of your questions. And I talked about the CSR earlier, and this is a copy of the homepage that shows you what's available out there. There's clerk, prosecutor, CSA information. They have all the tabs across there that you can click on to get information. We do a weekly newsletter, and you can click on the CSB Weekly News to see what this week's news is also. Your field consultant can train you or provide you tips on how to use this the best way. And then we have some additional resources. Your main resources will be the ISITS help desk. So if you have questions about adjustments or you're having problems with ISITS, you need to call the ISITS help desk. If you've got a question about a case or how something should be handled, then you're contacting your regional field consultant. And then we have some learning opportunities. So we've got a new clerk worker training and some in-class trainings that are available, regional court meetings. Hopefully we'll be able to have those in person in August. If not, we'll do like a Zoom or a Teams meeting. And I am done, so I'm going to turn this over to Joe Jean to talk about Invest so you can learn more about our new system. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. I know you're learning more about child support than you probably ever thought existed or wanted to know. But so Adam mentioned Invest before, and Peggy alluded to it earlier as well. So what Adam and Peggy said is our current child support system, ISETS, has been around since the 90s. And in reality, it has been in Indiana since the mid-90s, but it was based on technology that was developed as old as 1984 and existed in other states, and we brought it in and called it ISETS. So it's been around a long time, older than most of us, not me, but most of you on the phone probably. So a little bit of background about this. So folks who actually have been in ISETS and used it, you can just visually tell that it's ancient, and you have to probably spend about a year to become proficient in using it. So about, and I'll get to a timeline here, but as far back as 2007, we started planning for a new system, and we're finally now just building it. So what we're wanting is a more intuitive, user-friendly system, web-based, that looks familiar to all of us, much like our banking and our shopping web pages are. The other thing is the implementation of this system. So when ISETS was implemented in the mid-90s, the training was a lot to be desired. And I'm sure that some of you who were around then, Adam can probably attest that it was almost non-existent. So they made the mistake of training counties, and then sometimes as much as a year went by before the system went into that county. So what you learned a year ago was lost. So we're going to be on top of training and what we call on-site support, so that there'll be folks on the ground and available remotely for people to support those end users out in the counties when we bring this up. So the last bullet with the sub-bullets on it, project participation. So we have a lot of opportunities for both county clerks and prosecutors to be involved with this. We have what we call scrums, which basically are meetings where folks from the counties and our state workers get together with our vendor and talk about how the system should be developed, making sure the requirements of what we gave the vendor turn out to be what we wanted in the end. And we have those scrum invites sent out, and we really do need participation from the counties on those. And I know that there are some scrums that the clerks probably aren't interested in. They have to do a lot with child support enforcement, a lot of prosecutor functionality. But we do have scrums about creating cases, putting court orders on, posting payments, things of that nature that clerks are going to be responsible for and will want to know about. The other thing on the slide is what we call change champions. So we have a group that consists of, again, county folks from both prosecutor and clerks in the counties. And we call them our change champions because they're the individuals that we make sure we give them the heads up on any communications that are going to go out. If there's something important happening on the project, we get it to them first. And we also, in a proactive way, get information back. So our change champions let us know if things are going on in the counties. And they're going to be crucial when we get ready to implement the system because they're the ones who are going to tell us we can't do training on this date because, I don't know, we have elections or we have something else going on in our office. People are out. So it's a two-way communication venue there. Open houses. So we've created something that we call open houses, and that's for folks who don't have the opportunity or the time to be in all those scrum meetings. We're going to have our next open house, I believe, the end of February. And what this is an opportunity for everyone to see what's been developed so far. And the one in February is going to have a lot of functionality to see. It's a sneak peek of what the system's going to look like and do. And we'll make sure those invites get out to folks. We put it on our CSR as well. And then the last thing are what we call our Ocm surveys. So we like to take a temperature periodically to make sure that we're getting information out to the clerks and prosecutors, and we also want to get information back. So we send surveys out periodically to gather that information. What I move forward here is the high-level timeline, and I need to put my glasses on. So we kicked this project off in June of 2020, and we have, like many of you, been working remotely. And in the beginning, we were really worried about that because we weren't going to be in the same room with our vendor. But it has turned out to be very productive, and it's second nature to all of us now. So the project is actually moving at probably a faster pace than if we were located together. So we had our first open house back in October, and again, our next one is supposed to be the end of February. The work that's going on now in 21 is all about developing, building, and testing that system, putting the pieces together. And again, a lot of our county folks are involved in those design sessions, both from the clerks and prosecutors. Then we're really going to hit the road in 22 when we roll the system out. So we're going to have what we call just-in-time training so that your folks are trained, we'll say, 2 to 3 weeks prior to you coming up. So we don't have that gap of time where people forget. We're also going to have that on-site support, again, as I mentioned, so that we can be in your office. If you're a smaller office and you only need us there for a couple days, we'll get out of your way. If you're a larger office and would like us to hang around for a week or two, then those are the kind of conversations we'll have when we go through implementation. Make sure that you're not out there on your own. The types of trainings that we're going to have we have one called super user training. Super users are those folks that you identify in your county that are the go-to people. So think of the folks in your office right now that you would go to if you had ISETS questions. Those would probably be the same or maybe new folks who need to know invest as much as possible from A to Z, and they would be who you go to ask questions, and then they also can contact us if they have any issues or questions that they can't answer there locally. We're also going to have primary user training, which is everybody else who's using the system. We're currently having conversations on what should the clerk's training look like, because again, we don't want to waste your time, have your staff come to a training and sit through everything that we're going to have to train the prosecutors on, all the enforcement tools and all that. They're welcome to, to come to that training, but we know that your primary child support function is putting those court orders on, posting those cash payments. So if your training is more condensed and we don't have to have you in a training for a whole week, then we want to offer that to you as well. So we're figuring that out right now. We're working with our vendor Deloitte on what the curriculum is going to look like there. Last slide. So organizational change management, or OCM. So one of the loudest complaints, and I was one of them because I was here for ISET's implementation too, was we really didn't have communication from the state. We didn't have just-in-time training. And quite honestly, we didn't have a lot of input from prosecutors and clerks to build ISETs. So one of the things we did with Invest was way back in 2010, 2011, and 2012, we had both prosecutors and clerks come to Indianapolis and sit through requirements gathering sessions. And they were able to provide those basic requirements that they want the system to do. And that's what Deloitte is looking at as they're building our system. And so I really think we're going to get a system now that's actually going to be more useful, easier to use, and a lot quicker to learn. Now, my unit, OCM, is responsible for all outward-facing communications for Invest, as well as gathering information back from you. And there's a whole list here of all the different ways we get information back and forth to each other. So we have emails. So one of the things that I wanted to mention was on my team, we have a former elected clerk. Her name is Cindy Spence, and she was the elected clerk for a number of years in Hendricks County. So she knows practically, from a practical standpoint, of what you do. Because I myself had no idea that the clerks had so many varying responsibilities outside of child support. You've got all kinds of things. So she and I will craft an email to all the new clerks and make sure that you have the right resources and contact information. And if you don't currently have a change champion in your office, if we can work with you to help identify somebody, and maybe it's you as the elected clerk if you want it to be, to make sure that we're getting that information to you quickly. We're always willing to have those one-on-one conversations, especially if there's an issue in your county that you want us to help you with as far as scheduling training for the system, or if you want us to come out and talk to you one-on-one once all the COVID's over, we'd be happy to. Otherwise, we can do it via the phone. So the CSR is another place. There's actually a sub-site for Invest that has all kinds of information there that you can go out and read at your leisure if you like. That's where we post all of our information as we create it. Newsletters. We create a newsletter with the up-to-date information that's the latest and greatest status that we're working on. And again, the Change Champion group. That's probably I think one of the best ways to get information. We have Change Champion Teams meetings every month, and it's very interactive. It's well attended, and that's where you can learn a lot about Invest. And we also have started building a network so that you can have your neighboring counties, if you like, to rely on as well. And then again, surveys. We try to send surveys out at least quarterly to get information from counties and to see how things are working and that kind of thing. So if there's any information you want about Invest before I can get the emails out to you, your field consultant is another resource where you can ask them questions, and if they can't answer the question for you, they will get it to my team, and we'll get that information. So I know that's a lot thrown at you, and that was the end of my slides. So are we through here? Q&A? Are we having a Q&A? Yeah, Q&A, anybody? So how does that work?
Hold on one. Okay, everybody, I am going to give you back control of your cameras and your microphone. And if you would like, you may enter a question into the chat box if you would like, or if you would like to use your microphone or your camera on, you can introduce yourself here or ask questions if you have any. Tell us what county you're from, you know. Anybody? Maybe not.
Well, that's fine to me. That's
I do not have any questions at this point, but Cass County says hi. It's a lot of information. It's a lot, you know.
All right.
Well,
we thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. I'm going to put John back here so he can.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you guys for presenting. We will, like I said, we've got this recorded. We'll put it up on our website for them to listen to again. And you've given them lots of great information and ways to reach out if they need help. You know, so we really appreciate everybody coming and joining us today, and a huge thank you to Department of Child Services. Again, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we got some thank yous coming on the chat. So everybody have a great afternoon.
Bye.